What's going on, y'all? Welcome back to another episode. Obviously, I'm Swiper Cam. Welcome back to the channel. And y'all, we're going to have an amazing episode today. We got the one and only Mike Singer from the Denver Post, one of my absolute favorite writers who I've been reading from a long time now. So, Mike, I appreciate you making time to be on the channel today.
Of course, man. Thank you for having me on. I know we've been trying to get this done, but, I'm more than happy to come on and talk shop about whatever you want to get into.
Bet. Well, number one, like I said, big fan of your work. Obviously, there's been a lot of things that's been happening over the last couple of days, really over the last week or so. So obviously the main discourse of our conversation is going to be around Tim Connelly and the situation with the Minnesota Timberwolves, and obviously with the Denver Nuggets not offering at least it seems a contract extension that would have been up to par with maybe what he was looking for. But really, let's just start from the beginning. So can you just kind of even give us a little bit of detail, like on when you first heard about like what was happening with Tim Connelly and the Minnesota Timberwolves? Like, was that something that you knew about, like you had to find about through like kind of the background, or was that something that was kind of being talked about in Nugget circles a little bit?
All right, my full timeline, end of March, I get a text message from another reporter saying, hey, check on Tim Connelly's contract status. There are poachers lurking. That's what I was told in late March. And if you kind of pull back the curtain and look at some of the reporting that's been done since then, including myself, the Timberwolves had listed some of the best GMs, best presidents in the league as targets. I'm talking Sam Presti at Oklahoma City, Masai Ujiri, Toronto, Bob Myers, Golden State. On that list was Tim Connelly. Tim Connelly was easily the, quote, most gettable. That's what I was told going into this whole thing. He was the most gettable guy, and obviously from the Nuggets history. They did not protect Masai Ujiri in 2013. And I have to believe that the Timberwolves' new ownership knew that Tim Connelly was in a contract year. He had an option this summer. So the point that I've been making, I made it publicly before, is, Michael Malone got a contract extension in March. And so you ask yourself, what's the difference between Michael Malone and Tim Connelly? Why, if we value Michael Malone and the job he's done in his 7+ years in Denver, why don't we value the job that Tim Connelly's done behind the scenes and pulling the strings, making the moves, free agent signings, and, oh, by the way, drafting Nikola Jokic. Right. So I'd heard about it in March. I checked on it. I was told it wasn't a thing. That was maybe mid-April, wasn't a thing. Then they go to Serbia. As I'm doing the reporting for the Serbia trip for Joker's MVP, I hear a bit again, and I start vetting it with some people. And the Athletic broke it. John Krasinski, Shams, they knew it. They were sitting on that. I think ESPN was aware of it too. I had heard it, and frankly, there just wasn't a ton I could do on it. Like, I knew it was accurate. I just didn't know whether it would materialize. Right. Comes out last Wednesday. They're in serious talks, and as I'm like poking around, I find out that it has more legs than it's just like a just some kind of traditional rumor or whatever. It has legs, and basically what I gathered from talking to people close to Tim is that he just wanted to get paid equivalent to a guy who had some success in the NBA. I mean, this is not a guy who's brand new to this job. 9 years in, they have a sustainable organization. Pay him equivalent to that. Tim did not want to be paid like an elite executive, like those guys I mentioned. He would have been cool if he just would have been shown some love on the front end and not let it get to this point. There were so many opportunities for them to nip this in the bud. Just didn't happen.
So, Mike, let's just cut straight to the chase on this, because you've done a tremendous job reporting this since we first heard about it. But for you, do you personally feel as if just again, cutting to the chase, if Stan Kroenke wanted to keep Tim Connelly over the last few weeks, maybe even since March when you first heard about this, do you feel that if Stan Kroenke came with a legitimate offer to Tim Connelly, that Tim Connelly would have stayed as the basketball president of operations for the Denver Nuggets?
Yep. I think he would have stayed. I think he just, this dude's not driven by money. like, I realize that the offer is crazy, and I realize, 40 over 5 is plus the equity is generation changing money. Um, I just don't think that he ever wanted it to get this far, and the fact that it did was a tell. The fact that this is how KSE has operated historically. Evidently not with Michael Malone, but how they operated with Masai. And what made it even more complicated is that Josh Kroenke has a super close relationship with Tim Connelly. Like, they're
Right.
boys. They were both in Serbia together. But outside of that, like, they have a very good working relationship. Now it gets a little bit hairy because Josh Kroenke how much say does Josh Kroenke have in a final decision? Is
Right.
that Josh's call? Can he go to Stan and can he go to and say, Dad, hey, we need to pay this dude. This dude's worth it. He's equivalent to the money that is being offered from Minnesota. That part is very unclear. And if I had to wage a guess, I think that it errs on the side of he can say a lot, but I don't know that Josh can do a lot. At the end of the day, I think the buck stops with Stan. And so probably it's an indication that Stan did not value the job that Tim did here over the last 9 years. Whether Josh did, whether Michael Malone did, whether Nikola Jokic did or not. Like I said, buck stops with my man Stan. And to your question, had he wanted to keep him, I think he would have been here in a heartbeat.
So that's my thing with this, Mike, is that Stan doesn't have the greatest reputation in Colorado. I think that's fair. Obviously, the Avalanche, Joe Sakic, they've done a tremendous job building assets, pouring into that team. There have been some things that he's done. No practice facility, the Comcast disagreement with altitude. That's been 3 seasons, Mike. 3 seasons, both MVP seasons, that we've had to not have basketball on Comcast because of deliberation in the contract dispute that hasn't been resolved. So for many Nuggets fans, we have seen that he's willing to pay for players. We saw that in the Melo era and George Karl era. For that 1 year, they went to the luxury tax. Now they're definitely going into the luxury tax. But we watched, and everybody knew that Masai Ujiri was great at his job. Everybody knew it. We watched him in 2012, 2013 be a tremendous executive. And around the NBA, he was beloved. Everybody loved the work that he did. They bought into him as an individual, as a human being. Basketball Africa. The Toronto Raptors threw the ship at him. But Stan made this concept, this idea that, well, I'm not willing to pay a premium price, it seemed, but also I think that he's replaceable. It just got so happened, right? They got lucky. But also, to their credit, they found great talent in Tim Connelly, who struggled for the first 2 seasons and then came out swinging. He's been great. Everything you would want him to be. Great relationship with the player. Great relationship seemingly with the coaches. Great relationship with Josh Kroenke. Beloved around the NBA. People trust him. They talk to him. So, Mike, my whole thing is if you do all the work to find the talent, and from player development to free agency to putting a staff in place to be a legitimate contender, putting a team around, even though the team wasn't great, they still won 48 games, went back to the playoffs because of the work that he was able to do building around Nikola Jokic. And then to say that the MVP, one of the only 15 players to win multiple MVPs in NBA history, one of only 13 players to win back-to-back MVPs. He has a great relationship with Tim Connelly. Flew out to see him in Serbia. But even still, Mike, that's not enough. So the on-court product, the off-court relationships, that still wasn't enough. And Mike, I just feel, as somebody who has watched this team for years, it just feels that Stan has either been significant, like he's just really disconnected from the culture of the team and like what's happening. Or do you think that he just thinks he can just replace that position easily? Like he doesn't need to pay premium dollars. Maybe he can even get a little discount on what he was paying Tim Connelly previously.
Man, there's a lot of layers to it. First of all, I think that there is the potential for a little bit of hubris on the Cronkies and the idea that they can just keep replacing and finding these elite executives. Or maybe because Calvin Booth came from the quote unquote Tim Connelly, came from his kind of trajectory. Maybe they're like, well, we trust Tim's opinion. And even though he's not here anymore, we can still ride with Cal. And there is a lot of confidence in Cal in terms of his talent evaluation. in terms of his relationships. There is a glass half full component to this, and that he doesn't have those deep-rooted relationships that Tim Connelly did within the Nuggets organization with a guy like Will Barton, with a guy like Monte Morris. Those guys, which theoretically will make it easier in the event that they do end up, considering trade offers and looking for ways to improve this team. I think that there is a better potential. There's a outcome here that could be better in the long term for the Nuggets with Calvin Booth running the show. And that is a testament to Cal, and that is how I think he will approach this. That being said, throughout these past couple of days, someone close to Stan and Josh made the point to me that the idea of paying Tim Connelly, let's say the Nuggets have won 58, 59% of their games over the last 4 years. That sets a new precedent, not just for other NBA executives. That's fine. That is what it is. But in the KSC reign or domain, so you got Joe Sakic of the Avalanche. You got to pay him. You got whoever is running Arsenal. You got to pay him if they start winning. Sean McVay got his. And so my point is that it's not in a vacuum. You're not reaching a deal, and this is traditionally they don't budge. Stan and Josh don't budge. So I do think that they came up. I do think that they gave Tim something to counter. I've reported there was a significant gap between what Minnesota offered. There was a significant gap in the money. Forget about the equity. There was a significant gap in the money. So from Tim's perspective, once kind of the emotions subside, he's going to be like, man, this I had to do this. He knows he had to do this. There are people in Tim's ear who told him he had to do this, to people who he trusts. And I don't think anybody in their right mind can begrudge Tim's decision. And at the end of the day, the Nuggets let the guy who built the house, they let him walk. And, $40 million is a lot of money, plus equity is a lot of money. I don't think the Nuggets were ever going to give up that money. But to your earlier question, to the point about, like, can they save on the margins? I mean, maybe you're saving several $1 million per season in the long run by having Cal as your top position and not Tim. But isn't that pennies in terms of you're about to give Nikola Jokic $250 million? Like, I mean, maybe the TV thing has really come back to bite them in the butt. Maybe this is an indictment on maybe if they had that TV money, maybe they could pay Tim. Maybe this is like a cyclical thing that's just, it keeps undermining them. It keeps, kind of cutting down the foundation that they have. And look, there were frustrations that Tim had. And those that I mentioned, the practice facility, the TV stuff, like it killed him that the fan base wasn't able to enjoy and participate in Nikola Jokic's back-to-back runs. It frustrated Tim to no end. And so you go to a place that's going to offer you the farm, like, shoot, what do you, me, we're all more than listening if Minnesota comes with it.
So, but this is the other thing too. So, like, it just feels like the Cronkies organizationally lack foresight when it comes to basketball. So they paid Les Snead. They said, Les, do what you need to do. You could literally trade every draft pick we have so long as you win us a championship. And he did. And they ponied up contract. They're paying Aaron Donald, Jalen Ramsey. They got Odell Beckham Jr. They traded and paid Matthew Stafford. They got the receiver, got Cooper Kupp. They had Robert Wood. They just signed Allen Robinson. So, like, they're willing to spend money. In the executive level, they just repay Sean McVay. So, like, I know they're willing to do it. But when it comes to the Nuggets, it just seems like that's like a pet project that they don't really care about to the level of some of these other organizations. And, like, my thing with this is, it's become where it's not like a laughing stock per se, Mike, but what it feels like, Tim looks at Minnesota, state-of-the-art facility, recently built. It's on the team. They don't have Jokic. They don't have Murray. They don't have maybe MPJ. They got Anthony Edwards. They got Karl Anthony Towns and a tradable asset in D'Angelo Russell with assets to utilize around that roster as well. They have a management and an ownership that's going to empower him that says not only we're going to give you $8 million a year as an executive, here we're going to give you a stake in the company. That way, as we're growing, as this franchise is elevating, whatever that percentage number is, Your value as an individual is going to increase, and so long as you want, you could have a stake in this team. Means you also get to make more personnel decisions, perhaps, than most GMs or presidents of basketball operations would. So across the board, it was a stupendous offer. You're absolutely right. He should consider it. And honestly, given the fact that he is at a place that doesn't have a real practice facility, not mad at him for taking it. But as a business person, for Stan Kroenke to not have put it in place where you don't get a deal done with Comcast in order to make sure a deal done in 2019 to make sure Tim doesn't even have to listen to the DC offer. And then now, two back-to-back, two MVPs, you're about to have your best team maybe ever on the court at the same time. He trades for Aaron Gordon. He makes all the requisite moves, including what he was going to do this summer. And then you look at this and say, nah, you know what? I'd rather start all the way over at one of the most important positions in all of the NBA in the front office. It just feels like Stan has either had a lack of foresight or honestly, Mike, it doesn't – do you think he's fully committed to doing what it takes to win at every level in the NBA?
Yeah, I mean, when you look across the league and you're like, well, this owner X is willing to commit X amount of money, perhaps that owner, his only project, his only team is that NBA team. You know, maybe it's a bad thing that the Cronkies have so many franchises to quote unquote play with and to manage and run. Maybe it's too much. Maybe there's a lot of confidence in Calvin Booth. Maybe they just thought that maybe they were frustrated that Tim, flirted with DC. They gave him a raise. He comes back X amount of years later and wants another raise. But the thing is, and I've been saying this, Tim's not in it for the money. He's not trying to leverage this. He knows how Stan operates. He cares about the relationships. He just wanted to get paid like a middle of the road NBA executive. Like, that's all. He just wanted to be acknowledged that he had some success. Show me the love and acknowledge that I'm not just here starting from the jump. Like, to your point, man, you're entering one of the most important off seasons in your history, and you are going to turn the reins over to Calvin Booth, which it's fine. I think Cal's going to be fine. I'm not really worried about that, but it is the precedent and is the message that's being sent. What does Nikola Jokic think? What does Michael Malone think? The guy who, Tim is really close with Malone. Before Tim brought him over from Sacramento. Before that, they go back. Like, these are boys. They can hold each other accountable. I'm not saying Cal can't hold Michael Malone accountable, but I know that Tim can have some conversations with Malone because of that relationship. I'm assuming that Tim can have some of those conversations with Josh because of that relationship. Do you want to entrust arguably the most important years of this franchise to a guy who has never been atop the position? That's a decision. That's a decision that was made. And, maybe they just didn't, again, there could have just been frustration with Tim. There could have just said, you know what, we generally don't value the suits like we value our front of the house guys. We don't value the cook as much as we value the hostess. That's kind of what we're looking like here. You know what I'm saying? So that's kind of my read of the situation. They have historically not paid guys behind the scenes. They pay up front. They pay the players. And Michael Malone's well compensated. They pay the coach. Obviously, they got the deal done with him. I am just curious, their approach and their underlying belief about the executives, the guys who pull the strings. And tomorrow, Josh Kroenke is going to talk for the first time since I've been covering this team. I'm very curious what he's going to say. He's having a press conference, and I'm very curious how this is going to go.
So I want to get to that in a second. I think that's going to be a really interesting conversation for you. How do you think, if at all, how do you feel like the players maybe would respond to that? I'm not sure how connected they are to Nuggets history, but obviously with the Masai issue and then now the thing with Tim Connelly, do you feel as if this is going to have any effect on how they view the organization as a whole, or because they're so close-knit with the coaches and the other players that's what their main focus is? How do you think the players are going to respond to this?
I haven't talked to anybody yet, any of the players, how they will receive this information, other than Bones Highland tweeted out, damn. Yeah. So we know where his head's at with the Tim stuff. What I do know is that there were players looped into the situation. there were players well aware of what was happening and keeping abreast of the situation as it was going on. Players were looped in, which tells me the relationships are like, this is not Tim operating in a castle without anybody else. That's not how Tim operates. Tim bounces ideas off people. He trusts the relationships. He talks to Cal. He talks to other guys in the front office. He talks to the players. He's close with Nikola. He's close with Jamal. When Tim calls, those dudes pick up on the first or second ring. Like they're tight. So I can't predict. I don't know what it looks like. And I don't know. I mean, most of the team is pretty young and they don't know anything other than Tim as their primary voice. So we're going to find out. I do think Cal is well respected and he played in the league. He has more basketball, quote unquote, basketball experience than Tim does. So maybe there's a different perspective. But again, I think it could help. I think it could help having a guy who is, I'm going to say, quote unquote, ruthless, making the decisions, because for all of his strengths, Tim was loyal to a fault. And in some capacity, it might have hurt the Nuggets. But I mean, I'm not saying in the big picture, but I'm saying on some of the micro decisions, it might have hurt them because he's tight with everybody. Nobody disliked this dude. And I'm talking around the league. That's one of the reasons why he's so coveted. I mean, that's why Minnesota was willing to throw him the bag, is just, I mean, look, when they canvassed the league, they said, who's a guy who's well-respected, who's underpaid? Yeah. I was told yesterday, someone close to Tim, one of the offers was you can't refuse. One of the offers you can refuse. Yeah. And it didn't get, I mean, it's not that complicated.
Were you the one that reported that he had, I think when Jared Vanderbilt was being traded, that he ate with Jared Vanderbilt? Was that you?
Yeah. That night, I'll never forget it. We were like walking down the hallway and Tim, Vando had never really, like, he and I were cool, but we weren't like that cool. And he like comes over, he like daps me up and he says like, yeah, hey man, like, thanks for everything, whatever. And he's like shook. He's all emotional and everything. And Tim grabs him and he's like, yo, let's go grab a burger. Wow. And to me, that's just like, again, that's how someone else told me within the past couple of days that early on in Tim's tenure in Denver, he would come in at nights and he would rebound for Andre Miller. Like, this is not a guy who disassociated himself. I included this in the story yesterday. Tim has this party in D.C. after they beat the Wizards. I think it was in February or March or something. He's from D.C. All his boys are there, whatever. A lot of the staffers are there. After a little bit, in walks Monte, DeMarcus Cousins, Austin Rivers, Bryn Forbes, Marcus Howard, Jeff Green. All these dudes come in, and multiple times Tim came up to me. He told me to come too, and he says, screw it, Mike, you're cool. We like you. You can come. All right. And multiple times he comes up to me. He's like, I'm so happy that the players came. Like, I didn't like ask them to come. Like, they heard of it. They came. Like, he didn't push it. And it's like, Tim really recognizes the dynamic of being in a managerial position and the players. And he's like not going to put any undue pressure. He was just stoked that those guys wanted to show up and ride with him and just like take it. Like, they didn't stay that long. I think they stayed like half hour or something and just chilled, like grab a drink, whatever. And it was, I mean, and it meant a lot to him. It showed that it's a tight knit. It was, I think it still is, TBD, still a very tight knit organization.
Yeah, and again, just for people that are listening to this is in no way, shape, or form a referendum on Calvin Booth. I think many people, including myself and many others, think Calvin can do an exceptional job. It's just the process that we're running into that I think people are struggling with why Tim is no longer with the Denver Nuggets and how it happened in the first place. And even that language to me is gettable. Like, if you love somebody and you say, hey, I want to be with this person the rest of my life. Well,
don't make them gettable.
Right. Don't let them be gettable. Hey, man, here's this ring. Let's get married. Here's the date. But if somebody's gettable, hey, we've been together for 9 years. You've never asked me to marry you. Now, guess what? Somebody down the street, like, look, I'm going to give you this. I'm going to treat you this way. I'm going to make sure you're this, and that. And then I'm like, oh, my gosh, that's an offer I literally cannot refuse. And so I just think for this, it's just the way they treat executives at that level. It's just like, and again, it's not a good thing. Masai left, won a championship, and to this day is one of the 3 most popular and celebrated presidents of basketball operations and GMs in the NBA. And it's the same thing with Tim Connelly. I think people around the league obviously love him, but if he goes to Minnesota, Mike, and he's super successful, and just the worst situation possible, they win a championship for the Denver Nuggets, dude. Like, this is all going to turn back to one person making one decision, and it just, from a basketball standpoint, doesn't make sense. So, Josh Kroenke, 2 questions for you on this. Why do you think Josh, as the kind of leader of the organization, why do you think he hasn't really talked to the media and really in your tenure? And then tomorrow, what do you think the tone of the interview is going to be? Is it going to be, well, this is why, we decided to move in this direction? Do you think it's going to be one of those open conversations like it was with, with Coach Malone, or where like it was with Tim Connelly or with Calvin Booth? You think you're actually going to be able to ask questions, or is this going to be like kind of the state of the press address?
One thing that just came to mind: Tim is outgoing. Tim is gregarious. He doesn't mind talking. He'll talk to anybody. Can make friends with anybody. In some ways, Tim was a bit of a shield for the Cronkies. Like, I mean, Josh at one point told me he would be down to talk to me. It was before one of the playoff runs. He said, "Sure, we can connect." That didn't happen. It's fine. I've reached out to him a couple times amid this whole thing. Haven't heard back. It's fine. Wow. If you don't want to talk, that's cool. I'm good with, like, whatever. That's cool. But there are so many questions, and the heat is cranking up, and the temperature's turning up, and it's like, at what point are you guys going to account for letting Tim walk, not building a new practice facility? What's going on with the TV stuff? Are you going to dip into the luxury tax? All these things that you're just like, I mean, so it comes back to, is the X amount of million difference, the gap for what they offered Tim between what they offered him and what Minnesota offered him, is that gap worth the reputational stink that comes as a result of not paying him and letting that dude go, who nobody internally wanted to see go? In terms of what we see tomorrow, there better be some honesty. There better be some accounting and some justification and some explanation of how we got here. And again, on all those topics, not just the Tim topic. Tim is almost like the tip of the iceberg. It's like, all right, speak to it. If there's a reasonable reason, if you feel like you made a respectable offer, cool, and he didn't want to ride with that, then that's fine. Say it. Tell me. I'd also appreciate transparency. Tell me what the offer is. Let us deduce whether it really is, how competitive it really was, and whether Tim is just being, whether he's just taking the money. Like, I strongly believe that Tim would have stayed. And like, he didn't need it to match. It was widely reported he didn't need it to match. But in the event that they can get close, like, he would have stayed. So why didn't that happen? And how big was the gap? How honest and genuine was your offer? I would like to know all those things. I want to know the dynamics between whether the friendship and the relationship muddied the waters with the business component of Tim and Josh. I would like to know that. I would like to hear what's being done on altitude, and the television dispute and what you're doing to cater to a fan base. And to your question, man, why? Give me evidence that you're making that the Nuggets are a priority.
Right.
Enlighten me. Talk to me like I'm a second grader. Talk to me like I'm an idiot. Please enlighten me and hold my hand. And I can't wait. I'm curious for some dot connecting. I'm curious to hear what it is. Josh has not talked for 4+ years publicly. Cool. Maybe he got some stuff to say, and I think everybody's eager to hear it. Right.
So before we kind of end this conversation, we have a couple of super chats here. One of the questions that Hurricane had was, are the Cronkies committed to the tax beyond 2022, 2023? Would there be any information that you would be privy to at this point in time?
I mean, here's what I'm going to say. I think that if you're going to pay the tax, you better win. It's like an if A, then B type situation. They're going to pay the tax next year and they don't win, they are going to get very skittish about paying it another year. And what does that mean? It means if you don't win, heat's on. You probably have to trade some people if you don't win. I expect them to win. That's fine. Like, everyone should be healthy. So I think they're going to be
win a championship or like be a contender.
I mean, you probably need to, I would say, and this is almost unfair, but like, again, before we get into the trades and free agency and the draft, I'm expecting like kind of the basement. The basement is in between the second round of the conference finals to me. You better get that far. And I'm going to skew more towards the conference finals because you've ponied up. You finally paid the tax for the first time in 13 years. You got Porter healthy. You waited. You got Jamal back. Like, all right, you traded for Gordon. Let's see what it is. Let's see this iteration, which again, for those 2 weeks last season, not this past season, but the one before, it was 2 weeks where everyone's like, pinch me. We have a real chance of the championship. This window is open again. And the argument I've been making is these first 2 years are probably the best chance you have. Why is that? Because I don't know how much I trust Michael Porter's health. I don't know how much I trust him moving forward. 3 back surgeries already. They're entering a 5-year max deal. Let's see this is on a year-by-year basis. You know, show me that you can stay healthy and string some stuff together, and I will have more faith. That's not an indictment on Mike. It's just it's an unfortunate situation with his back. It sucks. But it comes back to there's not a lot of things you can knock Tim for. One of the things that you can knock him for is paying Michael Porter Jr. before he needed to pay Michael Porter Jr. Meaning he could have taken it to restricted free agency this summer, which I always say you want to have as much information as possible. And if that information includes another back surgery, that might be important information before I'm about to commit 145 guaranteed, 170 over the life of the deal to this dude. So, look, if it's going to be Cal. From everything I understand, it's going to be Cal who's running it. I got a lot of faith in him, but I think he's going to be aggressive. He knows it's go time.
Right. And then the last super chat we have, I don't know if you know anything about this, but can Mike discuss the Cronkies' financial commitment to the Nuggets relative to his financial commitments to, say, the Rams? Would you have any insight on any of that?
Yeah, look, if you're paying Sean McVay, you're extending Sean McVay, you're showing love to the head coach. Cool. They did the same thing to Michael Malone. That SoFi Stadium looks pretty shiny. So
$5 billion. Yeah.
When is there going to be a practice facility? Is there going to be something that there's a limit to what you can contribute to an organization salary cap wise. That is capped. But the other stuff, it's the tertiary stuff, the facility, it's the staffers. Do you compensate the staffers adequately? Do you pay people who keep the lights on and make everything else run smoothly, and who you should theoretically value, but do you? Things that you won't get credit for. Are you cool with paying things to make things work rather than things like we kept our coach, cool, who's had a successful year, cool. We kept our players and paid to keep them. Will Barton this past off season. We're going to pay Joker. We paid early on Jamal. We got an extension with Aaron Gordon. Like, they've made the commitments on the team side. Show me on the staffing side. Show me that we value the people that are here. And we might not be privy to that. But from what I understand, it is a organization that does not pay a premium for the people that we don't see in the public.
Right. Well, Mike, I appreciate you making the time for this. This has been an incredible amount of insight. This has been very in-depth as well. Obviously, I'm very, very curious to see what Josh Kroenke has to say tomorrow. And I know, obviously, you're going to ask some excellent questions as you always do. So thank you for making the time to have this discussion. And
we'll see.
Yeah. Well, hopefully it all goes well. But again, to the audience as well, please give Mike a follow. You can what's your handle on Twitter and everything? Where can people kind of follow all your information?
You can follow it at msinger. And I try to share every article I have there, podcast, every appearance I do, I'm more than happy to plug. And yeah, man, it's going to be a crazy off season. I think changes are afoot, and we're going to learn a lot about Calvin Booth real quick, both in terms of what they do with that draft pick, what they do in free agency, who he's willing to move. I think there's all the reason in the world why Nuggets fans should still be excited. It's not like they traded a core player. Tim was very much the heartbeat of what went on behind the scenes, no doubt. But the pressure's not going anywhere. The team's still there, and someone high up with the Nuggets told me the show's got to go on. Like, they're not bemoaning this and wallowing as jarring as yesterday's news was.
Right. Well, y'all, hey, please go follow Mike. Obviously, subscribe to the channel. Plus that subscribe button. Follow me, Swipe a Cam on Twitter, IG, TikTok. Y'all, we will be back for another episode. We will see y'all soon.